Alright, so if you thought you hated this thing enough, well, here's the thing. Mr. and Mrs. Wiggles isn't the evil thing. It's not evil, trust me. If you do use it, it loves you, but at the same time, if it's used against you and it has 2 shields, just so you're probably dead, especially if you're down shield advantage. Anyways, welcome to one of the most cutest, cuddliest things. It's number 40. It's known as Wigglytuff. Mr. and Mrs. Wiggles, I will say Mr. Wiggles for the sake of I use Mr. Wiggles a lot. This is Mr. Wiggles. Welcome to Mr. Wiggles Land. And guess what? Mr. Wiggles can actually be used in the Holiday Cup. As if Charmers weren't oppressive enough throughout the years as a Go Battle League, guess what? It's really, really good. Now what makes Mr. Wiggles one of the best Charmers in the game is that it has an incredibly high stamina, which means not only it's going to take a while before you kill it. Yes, it has low defense, but because its stamina is so high, it can eat so much damage, and it's somewhat of a tank. Yes, it can eat a Sludge Wave or something like that at some ranges, but you know, like, that's, like, if it's not, like, it literally takes a Sludge Wave, something that does an obscene amount of damage to, like, okay, a Wigglytuff at a certain range. Other than that, Wigglytuff is very, very powerful, and because it has Charm. So, the thing about Wigglytuff and what makes it really interesting, it's a normal and fairy type. Because of the normal typing and the fairy typing, it's a really unique type because this combination allows you to have neutral damage against fighting. So, because you have neutral damage, it allows you to basically pull off that ghost resistance, as you see here, without having to worry about that fighting weakness or, yeah, what normal brings you. So, it's also only weak to 2 types, poison and steel. Now, because of the poison and steel weakness, there's not a lot of those in a Holiday Cup that have this weakness combination. So because of that, Charmers are actually pretty safe in this meta. Now, of course, steel typings do have attacks like mirror shots from, like, Magnezones or, like, flash cannons from Skarmories, but 9 times out of 10, your opponent's Skarmory is probably be rocking, like, Brave Bird, so we don't worry about too much. It has... because of the fairy typing, you resist dragon, and you also resist bug and dark with this combination. Because of it, that bug typing resistance allows it to resist lunge, and the dark type weakness, like the Night Slashes from Obstagoon, it allows it to resist that as well. Because of that, Wigglytuff is actually very, very powerful in the Holiday Cup. Because of its combination of weaknesses and resistances, along with the fact that it has Charm, Ice Beam, Play Rough, it is an incredibly dangerous Pokemon with its bulky stout output, and of course, one of the best fast moves in the game in Charm. Alright, here we go with the PPoke.com rankings. Now, if you notice there what's on the top, and if you scroll down a little bit more, here's Mr. Wiggles at number 13. It's actually the best Charmer overall as rating-wise in the Holiday Cup. And if you look above here, there's very few things that actually threaten it. Like, yeah. If you give Wiggly 2 shield, it's going to do a lot of damage. As you see here, it's a very powerful lead, and somewhat as a switch. If you switch Wiggles into something it dominates against, it's very powerful. As you see here, you absolutely destroy Altaria and Galvantula, so because of that, you do a lot of damage. You're also able to beat all the pseudo counter users, and as well as Stunfisk, and a lot of other Pokemon, as long as you have 2 shields, or in certain shield scenarios. But if you have Wiggles with 2 shields, you're pretty comfortable. As you see, your key losses are against Skarmory, Alolan Marowak, Alolan Graveler, Diggersby, and Dugong. Now, Diggersby, the reason you beat Diggersby is because you actually are able to charm down Diggersby. Diggersby is a very thick mon with stats comparable to Azu, so it just shows you how powerful a Wigglytuff with 2 shields really is. You also lose against Dugong, so things that do debuff you with the exception of Galvantula, if it's like pretty thick on its own, it can beat you, so just keep that in mind. But still incredibly powerful as an attacker, even stronger as a lead, especially if you throw it into a positive matchup or lock it into a positive matchup. Wigglytuff effectively serves as the number 11 lead in the Holiday Cup. As you see here, beats normally what it does before. As I mentioned before, that's usually how the 2 shield and the overall work. And as a switch, like I mentioned, I wouldn't use it as a switch. However, it does function very well as a switch, rating at number 10. As you see, Mr. Wiggles is able to take down Snowman, all the fighters, Altaria, of course, and Galvantula. Now, as a switch, depending on the shield scenarios, you can lose against a few things like Stunfisk. However, like I said, depending on shields. Now, its worst position is the closer, because you don't want Wiggles to be in the closer. Charmers work with shields. You save shields for your Charmer, and then you charm down the rest of the competition. As you see here, you have to go really low before you find Mr. Wiggles. Actually, here's what I'm just going to do. Mr. Wiggles effectively goes at number 115. Still beats a lot of things in the closer if you lock it in there, even if it doesn't have shields. So there is play even if you don't have shields against some typings. However, generally, you don't want to leave Mr. Wiggles without shields. Alright, as you see here, it's peepjoke.com. The Matrix is my favorite thing because you get to see a bunch of things you win against and lose against and do a lot of plays. As you see here, if you would like to donate, please do so. peepjoke.com is an amazing resource, as I say time and time again. Now we have Mr. Wiggles at Ice Beam Play Rough. I also have Hyper Beam. The thing is, with Wigglytuff, you can be a little fancy with its moveset. Like, you kind of want Ice Beam just because it's the lowest cost move for Wigglytuff. But at the same time, its second move, you can kind of play around with it. Because Wiggles, along with other Charmers, the main reason for it is Charm. So, you put that out there. Now, I have the 2 shield right here. I'm going to run the 2 shield. I'm not going to run anything fancy. I'm just going to run Wigglytuff with Hyper Beam and Wigglytuff with Ice Beam. And just to use the Ice Beam and Hyper Beam one, just to compare and see just how, like, Wiggles' Charm is just really the main reason you have Mr. Wiggles anyways. As you see, you beat a lot of the leads in the Holiday Cup in the 2 shield. You lose against Dugong because it's thicker than you. You lose against it basically whatever doesn't resist it, you basically beat in 2 shields. That's a general synopsis of a Charmer. As you see here, the only matchups you really lose against are either things that are thick, as in Dugong, are able to debuff you. Debuffers, things that have bulk itself. Magnezone, because it's Steel type. Marowak, because Fire resist Charm. Same thing with A-Slash and Skarmory, they're both Steel types. And, of course, Wigglytuff will give you a simultaneous knockout. Now, the thing about the thing about this mirror match, if you do get a Charm mirror match, basically, yeah, it's really interesting because it's kind of IV. You probably played Charmers enough to realize this. However, if your opponent has like a really crappy one, for example, well, I think technically if they have a good one anyways, the like high attack will cancel out the defense. So if they have 12, 15, 5, here's what happens. It's still a simultaneous knockout. The break and bulk point between 2 Wigglytuffs aren't like super ridiculous just because Charm does so much damage. So just keep in mind, if you do get the mirror, generally the one that will win, if none of you throw a move, it will end up as a tie. Whoever wins CMP, if you both end up throwing your moves, is going to, as you see here, you're basically just going to kill each other. So it's up to you how you want to play that matchup with the mirror. I can tell you right now, though, you probably won't see if you see a lot of Wiggle mirrors, it's going to be a rough day anyways. So that's a 2 shield. Now if we go to the 1 shield, this is what we get. Now you'll see as Wiggle starts losing shields, it gets less and less effective, and it'll start picking up negative matchups. It'll start losing, basically. You still beat a Bomb Snow Altaria than 1 shield, however. Drifblim, Frostless, Galvantula. You will lose against Diggersby now because now it's thick enough to kill you with 1 shield down, with huge shield downs. You lose against Lantern, Lapras, and Talonflame. So you pick up like 8 losses or something of that sort. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like 5 or 6 more losses in the 1 shield. I'm not going to go too deep into in-depth ones because the general synopsis is this is how Charmers work. You lose shields. If you start losing shields, you start losing matchups. That's basically what it is. Or even shield scenarios. Now, of course, if you have shield advantage, that's even better. But in the Holiday Cup, as you see, Mr. Wiggles is actually really safe. The reason being is because there's not a lot of poison types or pure steel types in this meta. Because of that, it's still very strong, especially in the 2 shield, as you see. In the 1 shield, you still have a lot of play. You still beat things like Mandibuzz, Galvantula, Frostless, etc. Glassy things, even thick things like Snorlax, because you resist those licks, so still very, very powerful. Also, in the 1 shield, Wigglytuff is the better Charmer versus Whimsicott just because of its bulk. You also beat Vigoroth and Obstagoon, so in the 1 shield, it's not bad as long as you can take out. It's not bad. It's not bad. Now, the thing is, even if you do go against the ones, as you see in the one shield, that leaves, you can leave their Pokemon, or you can probably farm, like, depending on what you have in the back, you can probably try and farm this down. So you still have play. There's still play with Wigglytuff, even if you're in, like, this one shield. You can basically sack Wiggles and do heavy damage and then farm or create some other plays. Alright, so here's the Zero shield. As you see, the Zeros is really iffy. The Zeros, basically, you never don't. This is the worst position you can leave Wigglytuff in. That doesn't mean you don't win some matchups. For example, you beat Altaria, you beat Drifblim because you resist those hexes as well as Shadow Ball. You beat Galvantula, you also beat Mandibuzz, Obstagoon, Snorlax, Stunfisk, and you lose against the rest. Just because you never want to leave Wiggles in the closer. Like I said, if there's chip damage on your opponent, you could probably squeak out a match with Mr. Wiggles, but it really depends. As you see here, you do lose against the majority of the meta with the exception of Altaria, Drifblim, Galvantula, Mandibuzz, Obstagoon, Snorlax, and Stunfisk. So 7 of the 23 top meta picks as you see here. So try to not leave Wiggles with shields, or try to have chip damage on everything before you send Wiggles out without a shield. And hopefully your opponent doesn't have energy either. Now, here's the thing. If Wiggles does have a shield and your opponent has no shields, you truck a lot of the meta. You basically beat, like, everything that's not a steel type. Well, basically. Because you can beat Alola. As you see, you're able to defeat Alola and Marowak. Hyper Beam and Ice Hyper. The difference between Player and Hyper Beam, as you see here, is meager. Hyper Beam does give you some really convincing match. For example, you destroy a Lantern. But there's a lot of, like, 1-0s is very comfortable. As you see here, you only lose to steel types. Alolan Graveler, Magnezone, Skarmory, and Alolan A-Slash. Those are the only 4 typings you lose against. So 1-0s, you'll still lose against steel types, but the 2-0s, Mr. Wiggles is actually able to defeat the entire meta, with the exception of Alolan Sandslash if you have Hyper Beam. So it does matter if you have Play Rough or not. But in the 2-0s, Wigglytuff will beat everything, including, as you see here, including the steel types. In the 2-1s, Wiggles is still very powerful. Even as long as if Wiggles has shield advantage, Wiggles does very well. In the 2-1s, you will still lose against steel type. Basically, you'll lose against steel types, and you'll also lose against Dugong because Dugong's able to debuff you. So it's basically the same scenario as you would the 1-0s, but you pick up the Dugong matchup. That's basically it. And Alolan Marowak. So you pick up Dugong and Alolan Marowak, which isn't bad at all. So Wiggles is still very, very powerful in this. And even if they do, like, as you see here, you're gonna leave most of the ones that you fight, like, nearly dead. For example, if you do it against, for example, if you fight a Dugong with the 2-1s, here's what happens. That Dugong is left with 5 HP. So whatever comes in is going to kill it. So if it's, in certain scenarios, it might not even matter that your opponent has, this Dugong or whatever's left alive. But Wiggles is still very powerful in the holodev, and one of the reasons being is because, like I mentioned, there's not a lot of poison and steel things running around. In Open Great League, Wiggles is very threatened by things like B-drills, things with Poison Jab, essentially. Of course, Sludge Wave from Amok, Sludge Wave, Sludge Bombs, etc. And then also, like, Flash Cannons. The variety, Flash Cannon, Stunfisk, there's a lot of more steel typings in the open meta than they are in the Holiday Cup. Not saying Holiday Cup steals aren't effective, but as you see here, Mr. Wiggles does win a lot of matchups. Unless it's against most of the non-steel match. It's mostly non-steel, but very, very powerful. Especially with shield advantage. Of course, with any charmer in any position. So I have to give Wigglytuff a 9 out of 10. It's a fantastic lead. If you can leave Mr. Wiggles in the back and switch it into for example, you win the lead, your opponent switches something that Mr. Wiggles just runs into, then Mr. Wiggles is gonna go to town. Here's Mr. Wiggles in Open Great League. As you see, you got Bastiodon, Tentacruel, Registeel, some very popular picks. You go down to the Holiday Cup, it's even better in the Holiday Cup than it is in Open Great League. That's because you have less threats in Holiday Cup than Great League for Mr. Wiggles. Mr. Wiggles enjoys this absence of those really popular steel as well as poison picks, and this is what it does. It's very, very strong. Because of that, it can be Charm Hole and Grass Hole strats can be very viable in the Holiday Cup. Sadly, as much as it pains for me to say that. If you want to make a good comparison to Wigglytuff's use, if you've seen Wigglytuff in the Kanto Cup, it's basically the same thing. Except you have, yeah, it's basically like the Kanto Cup. With, like, yeah, basic usage. This is where you'll see Alola Marowak / other anti-charmers, etc. be used so that they can counter Wigglytuff. But you basically have... It's kind of bad. That's what makes a Holiday Cup a little... Yes, it's a fun meta. Yes, it's going to be good. However, because Charm and Razor Leaf Grass Hole Charm Holes are going to be... are viable, it can be a very painful meta. For some... Yeah, it can be a very painful meta. But 9 out of 10 because it's just so strong. Charm with two shields. Charm with 2 shields, the less presence of things to threaten Wigglytuff in this cup versus Open Great League. And Wigglytuff in general, it's very strong. Because of that, this gives Wigglytuff a high rating. However, if you like using Wigglytuff, then more power to you, because it's actually really good for the Holiday Cup. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I will be doing more analysis, but as you see here, Charm is very viable in the Holiday Cup. So it doesn't surprise me if you do see Wigglytuffs running around in the Holiday Cup. You guys have a great day, and I will see you guys on the next video. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets. And again, I will see you guys on the next video.